In a quiet hospital in the heart of America, doctors and nurses gathered around in astonishment. Sarah Mitchell, a white mother from Ohio, had just given birth to 10 beautiful babies, a rare and extraordinary event. But as the medical team carefully examined each newborn, a wave of shock rippled through the room. Among the tiny infants, one stood out. His skin was dark, completely different from his siblings. Whispers filled the delivery room as the doctors exchanged puzzled glances. Sarah, exhausted but eager to hold her children, immediately noticed the tension. "Is something wrong?" she asked, her voice weak yet firm. A nurse hesitated before placing the dark-skinned baby boy in her arms. Sarah gazed at him, taking in his tiny fingers, his soft curls, and his deep brown eyes. A tear slipped down her cheek, not from fear, but from an overwhelming sense of love. "He's beautiful," she whispered, kissing his forehead. "He's mine." Her husband, Michael, stood frozen, staring at the child. Confusion clouded his face, but when Sarah looked up at him, he saw something undeniable: the same love she had for each of their children. He reached out, gently touching the baby's hand. "No matter what, he's ours," Michael finally said, his voice steady. The doctors suggested genetic testing to find an explanation. Sarah and Michael agreed, but in their hearts they already knew the truth. This child was meant to be theirs, no matter what science said. News of the unusual birth spread quickly. Hospital staff, neighbors, and even strangers had their own theories. Some whispered about infidelity, others speculated about rare genetic mutations. Social media exploded with debates and assumptions. Sarah and Michael weren't prepared for the public scrutiny. Reporters knocked on their door, tabloids twisted their story, and even friends hesitated, unsure of what to say. One day, while Sarah was pushing the stroller with her babies in the park, an older woman approached her. She looked at Elijah, the dark-skinned baby, then at Sarah. "Is he adopted?" the woman asked bluntly. Sarah's heart clenched, but she smiled. "No, he's my son." The woman frowned. "But how?" Sarah took a deep breath, holding her child closer. "Because love doesn't need an explanation." Days later, the genetic test results arrived. The doctor, a kind-looking man, sat across from Sarah and Michael in his office. He cleared his throat and handed them the papers. "There's no mistake," he said. "Your son, Elijah, carries African ancestry, traced back several generations on Sarah's side." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "But my family has always been white." The doctor nodded. "Sometimes genetics works in mysterious ways. DNA carries traces of our ancestors, even those we don't remember. This part of your history simply resurfaced in Elijah." Michael exhaled, rubbing his temples. "So, this was always a part of us?" "Yes," the doctor confirmed, "and it's something to be proud of." Sarah sat in silence, letting the truth settle. Her son wasn't an anomaly. He was a living connection to a past long forgotten. That night, Sarah called her parents. Hesitant but needing answers, she asked about their family history. After a long pause, her mother sighed. "There is something. Your great-great-grandmother was of mixed heritage. But back then, people didn't talk about it. A forgotten history, a hidden lineage. And now Elijah was the one to bring it back to life." As Elijah grew, he remained different from his siblings, not just in appearance but in the way the world saw him. People stared, asked questions, and sometimes made cruel remarks. At school, a classmate once told him, "You can't be their real brother. You look nothing like them." Elijah came home in tears. Sarah knelt beside him, wiping his cheeks. "Baby, what makes us family isn't skin, it's love." Michael joined them, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "You are just as much a Mitchell as any of your brothers and sisters, and anyone who says otherwise doesn't understand what family truly means." Elijah sniffled, "But people key." Sarah hugged him tightly, "Then let them stare. Because you, my son, are a miracle." Elijah, with time, grew into a confident young man. He embraced his unique story, educating others about genetics, heritage, and most of all, love that transcends all barriers. One day, he stood in front of his class for a school project and proudly said, "I am proof that family isn't just about blood. It's about the love that binds us together, no matter what." Years passed. The Mitchell family remained strong, their bond unbreakable. Elijah, now an adult, became an advocate for diversity and unity. He gave speeches, sharing his story with the world, helping others embrace their unique identities. At a gathering, someone once asked Sarah, "Looking back, how do you feel about everything that happened?" She smiled, looking at her son, now a man filled with wisdom and kindness. "It was never about the color of his skin," she said. "It was always about the color of our love." And with that, she hugged Elijah, knowing that their family, different, extraordinary, and beautiful, was exactly as it was always meant to be. As Elijah grew older, he began to notice that the world didn't see him the way his family did. At home, he was simply Elijah Mitchell, one of 10 siblings, a child loved unconditionally. But outside, people constantly questioned his place in the family. One day, while shopping with his mother, a stranger stared at them before bluntly asking, "Is he adopted?" Sarah held Elijah's hand firmly, smiling but with a steady voice, "No, he is my son." The woman gave a puzzled look and muttered, "That's unusual." Elijah didn't understand why a simple answer wasn't enough for people. At just 7 years old, he was already realizing that to the world, he was different. One evening, he walked into the living room and saw his parents deep in conversation. Sarah looked up and smiled, motioning for him to come closer. "Elijah, your father and I have something we want to talk to you about." Michael placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "We know you might feel different sometimes, and that's okay. But do you know what makes you special?" Elijah shook his head. Sarah gently said, "You are a bridge between the past and the future. You carry a history that not many people get to embrace." After that night, Sarah started researching their family history, determined to understand the ancestry that had surfaced in her son. She uncovered stories of a great-great-grandmother who had African heritage, something that had been forgotten or erased by time. Realizing this made Sarah feel an even greater responsibility to help Elijah understand that he wasn't just different. He was unique, and that was something to celebrate. As Elijah entered his teenage years, he became more aware of the way society categorized him. One day, while playing basketball with friends, a boy from the opposing team smirked and said, "You don't look like a Mitchell." How can that be your last name? Elijah froze. An awkward silence filled the air. He had never thought that his last name, the name he had always been proud of, could be questioned. That night, he came home and found his mother in the kitchen. "Mom, should I change my last name?" Elijah asked quietly. Sarah turned, setting down her spoon, and looked at him with deep love. "Why would you ever think that?" Elijah lowered his gaze. "Because people say it doesn't match me." Sarah walked over, gently lifting his chin. "Elijah, a name is not just letters on a page. It's family. It's love. No one can take that from you unless you let them." Michael, hearing their conversation, stepped in and placed a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. "You are a Mitchell, son, not because of your skin color, but because this family is yours." Elijah swallowed back his emotions. He knew the world might not always accept him, but his family always would. During high school, Elijah found a way to turn the questions, the stares, and even the doubts into something powerful. He began studying genetics, researching racial history in America, and learning about people like him, those who carried multiple identities in a world that often demanded they choose just one. In his final year, Elijah wrote an essay titled, "Who Am I?" He wrote, "I am the son of a white family. I have 9 siblings who do not look like me, but who love me the same. I am a part of a history that many have forgotten, but I will not let it be erased. I am not just the color of my skin. I am my parents' pride. I am the keeper of a story worth telling." His essay went viral not just in school but across social media. People from all over the country reached out, sharing their own experiences of feeling caught between two worlds. One day, he received an email from an elderly woman. "You helped me see myself differently. I too have ancestry I never acknowledged. But because of your story, I finally looked in the mirror and felt proud. Thank you, Elijah." For the first time, Elijah realized that his difference wasn't a burden. It was a gift. As Elijah grew older, he decided to dedicate his life to helping others like him, people struggling with identity, race, and belonging. He traveled across the country, sharing his story, encouraging others to embrace every part of who they were. On his 30th birthday, Elijah returned to his childhood home. Sarah and Michael, now older, greeted him with warm smiles, their love unchanged. Sarah embraced him and whispered, "You have become everything I always believed you would be." Elijah smiled, hugging her tightly. "Because of you, Mom." As the sun set, Elijah looked around. His once small siblings now grown, laughter still filling the house. Family wasn't about skin color. Family was about love. And that was the truth he would carry with him for the rest of his life.